Hi everyone and welcome. This is the Apostate Prophet. I hope you're having a fantastic day. Muhammad is an extremely important character within Islam. He's not just the Prophet of Allah and the final messenger. He is also considered the perfect moral example for all humankind, for all times. And Muslims love to mention all the things that Muhammad said and did in order to give advice on how to behave and not to behave, on what is allowed and is not allowed. Such a tradition comes with big problems like the spreading of unreliable or outright fabricated reports on what Muhammad said and did. Today I want to present around 20 hadiths that are very commonly, very openly and often shared, which are either weak or fabricated. I want to start with one that I heard so much growing up. Many Muslims still don't know that this is a completely fabricated hadith. It goes, "Seek knowledge even as far as China," or "acquire knowledge even if it is in China." This is something that you hear so often in the Muslim world. They say learning things is very important, making yourself wiser is very important, because the Holy Prophet said, acquire knowledge even if you have to go to China. The reality of this is that such a quote doesn't exist. It only appears in later sources and in no reliable book of hadiths, with no witnesses, no transmitters that lead back to Muhammad. Muhammad probably would have never mentioned China. Together with this, there are two hadiths that also need to be mentioned. One of them is, "Seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave." This one is also shared quite often. This is also fake, doesn't exist. And another one is, "Seeking knowledge is a duty upon every Muslim." Now this one appears in one source and is called by some scholars authentic, but there is only one single such source for this hadith. The next example is, "The ink of a scholar is holier than the blood of a martyr." Scholars are more important than martyrs. Unfortunately, this hadith too is not a real Muhammad quote. Yet another very related example is this hadith, "To think for an hour is better than to be engaged in worship for a period of 60 years. This one again is non-existent. Muhammad never said it. One hadith is often mentioned by some Muslims to point out that diversity of opinions within the Muslim community is actually good. The quote goes, "Disagreement among my ummah, my community, is a source of mercy." This quote is also false. It doesn't exist. The next one is a very annoying one, and I'm sure many of us have heard about this. It goes, "The Prophet was once returning from a battle with his companions, and then he turned to them and said, 'We have returned from the lesser jihad to the greater jihad, the fight against your evil desires.'" This one is completely fabricated. It doesn't appear in any reliable source of hadiths, and scholars will tell you that it is fabricated. Unfortunately, this one is nowadays so popular in pop culture that I even heard a scholar of religious studies from a prestigious university cite this as part of his religious studies course. This is fake. It doesn't exist. There is no such thing as inner struggle is the greatest jihad. Sounds profound, but it's fake. The next one is one that I heard so much in Turkey, and I wish I could go back in time and tell everyone that this is a fake hadith. It goes, "To love your country is a part of faith," or "loving your country is part of Iman." This is completely made up. It doesn't exist. Muhammad never said this. If you hear Muslims say this, if you are a Muslim living in Muslim nations and you hear people say this, or you are an ex-Muslim and you live there and you hear people say this, feel free to tell them, hey, that quote is nonsense. It doesn't exist. Muhammad never said that. The next one is a very important one. Muhammad sees an elderly woman who needs help and he helps her carry her things. On the way, this woman tells Muhammad, without knowing who he is, that there is this guy going around who curses the gods and he's a very terrible person and people say all kinds of bad things about him. And Muhammad doesn't make a sound. At the end, when they arrive at their destination, the woman says, "Take care of yourself and don't go near that evil guy." And then Muhammad says, "I am that guy." And then the woman is like, "Oh, wow, you are nothing like that at all. I hereby testify that Allah is the only God and you are his messenger." This is a completely made-up story. It doesn't exist. And this is similar to the next one, in which a Jewish neighbor of Muhammad throws garbage at his doorstep every day. And instead of punishing her and reprimanding her, Muhammad just endures it. And one day she gets sick and doesn't throw garbage in front of his door. And Muhammad then asks, "Where is she?" Then he is told that she is sick and he goes to visit her, to wish her well. Unfortunately, this hadith is also not a hadith. It doesn't exist. This is a fabricated story. It never happened by Islamic standards. And I made a video about this in length. The next example is one that Islamic mysticists who are very spiritual often bring up. It is, the heart of a believer is Allah's dwelling place. This is, again, a complete fabrication. Islam is not that romantic. Then there is one about Arabs. It goes, love the Arabs for 3 reasons. Because I am an Arab. The Holy Quran was revealed in Arabic. And the language of Jannah, of paradise, will be Arabic. I heard it so often in my childhood and youth that the language of paradise will be Arabic. And this was cited. Unfortunately, such a quote doesn't exist. It's fabricated. Another fake hadith is, kindness is a mark of faith, and whoever is not kind has no faith. This one, again, doesn't appear anywhere. It is fabricated. Whoever mistreats a dhimmi, a non-Muslim living under Islamic protection, Allah will be his opponent on the Day of Judgment. This is one that is brought up to show how terrible and bad it is to harm and mistreat and oppress non-Muslim minorities within an Islamic society. Unfortunately, this hadith doesn't exist. Now the next one is one that even people like Hamza Tzortzis, Muslim apologist, and others quote occasionally in order to explain to us that the golden rule also exists within Islam. They say that Muhammad said, love for humanity what you love for yourself. The words love for humanity what you love for yourself do not exist in any authentic report that leads back to Muhammad. What does exist is Muhammad saying that you should love for your brother or your neighbor what you love for yourself. The Quran is very clear on the idea that Muslims are brothers of each other, the others are not. And Allah dislikes, does not love the disbelievers according to the Quran. And Muslims are supposed to love what Allah loves and dislike what Allah dislikes, or hate what Allah hates. The next supposed hadith is one that concerns the treatment of women. According to a certain claim, Muhammad said that only a noble man treats women honorably, and only an ignorant man treats women dishonorably or disgracefully. As nice as it sounds, this is a fake hadith. It doesn't exist. The next one is similar. It is about how to treat others. It goes, what actions are most excellent? To gladden the heart of human beings, to feed the hungry, to help the afflicted, to lighten the sorrow of the sorrowful, and to remove the sufferings of the injured. This hadith supposedly comes from Sahih Bukhari. It was quoted in pop culture, including by celebrities. Unfortunately, in Sahih Bukhari, such a hadith does not exist. This quote altogether doesn't exist anywhere. Then we have a narration about Omar, Muhammad's very close advisor. This is not a direct quote of Muhammad, but it's very related and very necessary to mention. According to a certain report, Muhammad's advisor and close friend and second caliph Omar, in the pre-Islamic era, buried his daughter alive. And when he was there digging her grave, dust fell on his beard, and then his daughter, who was supposed to be buried, wiped the dust off his beard, upon which he became very emotional and cried. This is part of a Muslim narrative which is meant to explain that before the Islamic era, in the era of ignorance, people used to bury their girls alive. And even Omar himself did that. It seems to be just another dramatic addition to make pre-Islamic Arab polytheism look very terrible and primitive, and make Islam look glorious. Fortunately, this is a fabrication. It doesn't exist. Next, Muhammad is claimed to have said, when a husband and a wife look at each other, Allah looks at both of them with mercy. It sounds pretty cute, but this is again not a real quote by Muhammad. And finally, I want to quote this one, which I find personally very interesting, very significant. This is something that I heard a lot in my spiritualist, mysticist Muslim environment, and it's one that really signifies the insanity of certain Muslim beliefs. It is the report that Allah supposedly said to Muhammad, "If it weren't for you, I would not have created the worlds." I learned in my past, in my youth, that this is real. And back then I thought, wait a minute, there's something off with this. Allah creates everything and everyone, but He creates all the worlds because of Muhammad, who is also His own creation. The hadith is completely made up. It doesn't exist. Muhammad never said such a thing, according to Islamic standards and reports. And that's it. Now, there are so many more that are attributed to Muhammad and that are completely fake, fabricated, or unreliable, weak. And I could go on with this forever, but this is a summary of some of the very important ones that I think I heard before and that are mentioned quite often. Incidentally, many of these make Muhammad sound more insightful, more relatable, thoughtful, loving, more tolerant than he actually was. If you want to read about who Muhammad really was, you can start reading the books of hadiths. Or I can soon make a video when I have the time to summarize who Muhammad really was. But for now, you can watch my video, 10 things everyone should know about Muhammad. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, don't forget to like, to subscribe, and to share. If you want to support what I am doing, consider supporting this channel on Patreon. I really appreciate your help. I will be back soon. Have a fantastic day and
stay away from Islam.